This week's assignments are focused around developing a plan. And we're not by any means, I'm not by any means expecting you to create a full test plan. There's a whole class that teaches you how to do that. But the idea is to go through each of these phases and kind of differentiate what the unique aspects of the phases are and tying that into your original design and your requirements that you've built previously here. So I pulled up the assignment so we can see there. So it's saying, update everything else, make sure it's good, and that's important. You want your requirements and your design to be the best effort they can be before you dive too deeply into your testing. And so it's asking for unit testing, system testing, user acceptance testing, and then the general plan inside of there. And so let me walk through each of these, what it's asking for, and what I would expect you to do. The biggest thing here is there is no test plan. You can go and say, hey, give me Google test plan, and this is the one that comes up, and this is the one everybody should be using. There's nothing I can give you that says what sections or what headers or what tables or whatever's supposed to be there. So let me give you some options. Test plans are always customized to the company and the project that you're working on, depending on the level of detail they want to. So for this one, specifically inside the unit test plan, they want to know application functions are going to be tested. For the system testing, within the system and the system as a whole, how are you going to be testing those aspects? The user acceptance testing, who are the key stakeholders and how are they going to test this stuff? And then the quality assurance plan overall is basically the bigger picture stuff we talked about, like what are the different controls in place. We'll get into scheduling later on. That's not what we're looking at specifically here. But what are the phases involved, most important, that you're going to do? And obviously you're creating unit testing and user acceptance, so we can talk about those phases. So let's get this out of the way. Maybe we'll come back to it. But this is the template that I've given you. This is those sections pulled out, and a little bit of the test documentation I've had here. So we can kind of start to delete some of this and go from there. So this unit test plan should align nicely to your design. It doesn't really align to the requirements per se. It's going to align more to the design. So in your design, you've either created a flowchart-ish thing that is actually the data flow diagram, and that testing that is pretty straightforward, or you've created some class and sequence diagrams, and you can talk about testing those things. So for instance, in our imaginary systems that we've been building, let's go back to that inventory management system. So the idea is a user is saving things out there. So basically we have a number of tests we could do, and when you do a number of things, we can throw a table out there. And so let's just create a table of some size, and so we'll say unit test ID. So UTID. We're just going to put a little there. Now, again, you don't have to use this exact thing. You can spell things out, but I want this column to be kind of small. But we're going to some ID. So let's say we're going to have 1, 2, 3, and so on inside of there. It was just something to identify with. And then this is going to be the component, and then the details. We don't necessarily name unit tests per se because they're pretty focused, they're pretty detailed. But the component here could be the let's say this is the data access object here. And we can have a number of tests inside of here. And so the details inside of here is test the add function to ensure it adds to the database, and then test the edit function, and so on. And I don't want to spend too much time here because we're going to run out of time in a hurry, but you see the idea is the different methods that you've created on one of these components we can go through and test individually. I could be testing several things with this. It doesn't mean that the data access object is necessarily a single class. It could be a bunch of classes that are working together. That's okay too, but it's tied again to the design that you built up above. You're going to take each one of those methods that shows up on an object, either as part of the class diagram or for part of a use case diagram, or each one of those processes that shows up inside of the data flow diagram. Each bubble basically gets it's a test that's part of this unit test plan. And This could be kind of high level, test the add function, test the edit function. It could also be a little bit more detailed, where test the edit function where a value is no longer valid, something like that. And again, in our case, maybe the price is not a number or something like that. So this is the type of stuff that you'd be capturing at the unit test plan level. Again, the most important thing here is to focus in on the types of tests you want to create. I want to focus in on the type of things you want to test. And it's not at the requirements level here. It's at the design level that we want to focus in on these. And the types of tests we're going to do are going to be essentially tests that would test every aspect of that functionality. Your sequence diagram or your big flow that's up there for your data flow diagram might only show the happy case when everything's working fine. This unit test needs to consider the failure cases. What if the user gives you bad data? What if the databases can't be connected to? The database is down. What if? Those all should be covered as part of your unit test plan. This is where I'm covering the code at its lowest level. So that's the first step. I'm not expecting pages and pages and pages here. I've given you 3 very quick and dirty examples in the time I would have. I would expect you would maybe fill up half a page maybe with unit test plan information. So when you get down to it, you probably have maybe 10, 15 different unit test plans at this level. I do not need to see step by step. I don't need to see, certainly don't need to see screen actions inside of here. But for this class, what's good enough for us for now is to put out the concept that you understand the focus and goal of unit test plans and why we do the unit testing in general. All right, so the next video, we're going to jump into the system test plan, and we'll walk our way through each of these. So take a moment now, build your unit test plan, get that going, and then continue on and go from there. Don't overload yourself with this. Just build this while it's fresh, and then move on to the next part of your test planning.